All right, let us welcome Terry, who is going to share on the topic Cocaine Anonymous, where dreams come true for us today.
Thank you so much. It's really good to be here with all of you. So many friends from around the world. What a gift it is to be a member of Cocaine Anonymous, where dreams really do come true. Um, my life before Cocaine Anonymous started out, uh, I was a joyful child. I was number 9 out of 10 kids. Um, there were 4 girls and 4 boys, and I was born. And they even did a play called Tiebreaker Terry, because I came in and all the girls were rooting for another sister. And when my dad packed all 8 of the kids up in the station wagon and drove them to the hospital, and he held me up like to the window, and the kids from the parking looked up, and even from way down there, it was obvious that I was a boy. And so there was Tiebreaker Terry, born into this world on Christmas Day, 1955. And man, I have so many great memories of my childhood. And then when I was about 11, my mom got sick with cancer. And when that happened, it's like it sent a tidal wave through our family. What I've come to learn as a result of a tremendous amount of work and recovery is that everything that happens to us matters. And nobody thought a little kid would have feelings. I'll never forget what it was like. And I also grew up at a time where drugs were everywhere, right? It's just like it is today. I think today's probably even worse. But I grew up at a time where um, there's a band called Van Halen that was in my neighborhood where I grew up. And they have a song that goes, I'm your ice cream man. Stop me when I'm passing by. I got every kind of flavor guaranteed to satisfy. Well, I used to buy dope from the ice cream man in my neighborhood. And I started on narcotics so fast, and I loved the effect, right? I would take it. I got through life. I wasn't so sad. It was just great. And of course, anybody that's an addict, you don't take drugs for very long before the drugs take you. And that's what happened to me. I got busted for the first time. Well, I got busted when I was in the 7th or the 8th grade, right? So that would put me no more than 12, perhaps, yeah, probably 12 years old. And I was going to Catholic school, and there was a drug back in the day that only older folks would know. It was called Reds or Seconal. And this drug had no purpose other than to just, the nickname for them were stumblers, because that's all you do. You just fall out. And I liked them because I didn't have to feel. And I remember taking 4 of them at school. When I think about that, that would be a lethal dose probably for me as a grown man at 200 pounds. But for this little boy, um, I took a bunch of drugs at school, and I started falling out. And I'm falling out of my chair, and the kids are putting me back in the seat, and I'm trying to write my assignment, and I'm falling down and dropping the pencil. And and eventually the sister saw what was happening. She pulled me out of the classroom, put me out in the hall, where I sat there and projectile vomited. I was overdosing. I was in a lot of trouble, but they didn't know what was happening back then, right? And this is in the mid 60s, maybe 67. Nobody had a clue what the hell was going on. There was no such thing as children addicts. So the next day when I got to school, the principal of the school called me into her office with the other nuns. And they said, we know that you're on dope, and we know that other kids told on you. And if you will tell us the truth will set you free. That's what it says in the Bible. The truth will set you free. And if you tell us the truth, we are not going to tell your poor mother because we do not want to add to that woman's suffering. And oh man, I love my mom with all my heart. And I was just so sad as I watched her get sicker and sicker. And so, I sat there and I thought about it, and I already knew don't ever give up the truth. But this time I felt like I got to protect my mom. And I said, yes, sisters, I took the drugs. And they said, okay, well, you head on back to your class. And that was the end of it. Well, the following day, when I stepped off the school bus, my mom said, come here, I need to talk to you. And she took me back into the laundry room where she was ironing the clothes for her huge family. And she said, the sisters came by today and they told me that my son was a filthy doper. They told me that you were on drugs with some of the other kids. And she said, I cannot believe the shame you have brought me. I cannot believe the shame you have brought to your father. If I tell your father, he'll beat you to death and you deserve that, but I need him to feed the rest of these kids. The shame you brought your sister Kathy and your brother John and your brother Jim and Rita and Maura and Brian and Michael. And she just went after one after the other. The shame you put on me. She said, now you're going to carry this secret to your grave and I'm going to carry it to mine. A grave you have put me in early. Now get out of here. You make me sick. That was my drug and alcohol treatment as a 12-year-old boy. I walked out of that room feeling so much pain, so much shame. It was horrible. But I knew what to do to kill my feelings, right? All I had to do was go find another one of those pills, something that'll take me up, something that'll take me down, and that's what I did. Now, when I tell you Cocaine Anonymous, where dreams come true, things have happened in my life that I've never even dreamed of. I went my entire life believing my mother's last words to me were, get out of here, you make me sick. I was 15 years sober in Cocaine Anonymous, 50 years of age, nearly 4 decades beyond that nightmare, beyond that moment of incredible pain with my mother when I heard her real last words. And what had happened is I'd been introduced to the 12 steps and had worked them hard and often. And I'd started going on retreats and I would start meditating. And as a result of all of that accumulative step work over a bunch of years, I started to get freer inside. And when I do my steps, it's like I'm taking the trash out. I'm like getting rid of the pain of the past to where I can maybe connect with the rest of my story. And I was meditating at a retreat. And I was sitting in this chapel. And it was quiet. And they said, think about some unresolved conflict in your life. And I thought, I got nothing. I'm cool. My life's good. My marriage is good. My health is good. My 15 years sober, I'm good. But I know because I've been taught well. I've been taught by men like Ken, who was on this call with us, Ken Cross, one of our earliest members, taught me about the value of meditation and the value of the 12 and 12 and the value of always being willing to go a little bit deeper. And as a result of doing that kind of work, I'm sitting there. I knew, don't discount the fact that I don't have anything. Just be here now, in the present moment, the only place where God exists. And so I just stayed with it. And the next thing you know, I was in that laundry room with my mother. And I was seeing that pain in that moment like it's as real as I see any of your faces. And then the next thing that happens, I'm flashed a few years later. I'm at my mother's bedside as she's taking her last breaths. And when I would come home from school, my job was to feed my mom. I would take like a bowl, it looked like oatmeal or gruel or something, and I would put her vitamins in it and mix it up. And I would feed my mother with the eyedropper, and I would take the eyedropper and I would put it in the corner of her mouth and feed her food. And the cancer had broken off, and my mother hadn't spoken in months. It had created, I think it's called an embolism or an aneurysm or something that had stopped the ability for her to speak. And I'm sitting there and I'm giving her this eyedropper full of food. And she looks at me and she starts moving her mouth and she goes, mm-mm, mm-mm, mm-mm. And I'm going, Mom, what is it? What is it? And I start to cry because I don't know. I'm not ready for her to die. I'm just like, what is it, Mom? And she said, I love you, baby. Those were my mother's last words. Why did it take 15 years of sobriety to hear it? I understand why. Because I have a disease called addiction that centers in my mind, and my disease does not want me to hear, I love you. I forgive you. I understand, son, that you did the best you could. My disease wants to hold on to the shame and the pain and the hurt and the vengeance and the anger and the shame. Oh, how it feeds on shame. So I didn't even know I could dream to heal with my mom died in 1971. I got sober in 91, and I had that experience 15 years after that. So time matters to me. My time matters to me because most of the healing that has occurred in my life, I'm talking the deeper, like stuff at the core, has occurred between 15 and 34. And it's not that I've ever like, I'm doing things different. I think that when Bill wrote More Will Be Revealed, they mean it. Life happens. We face the challenges, you know. So I'm the kind of drug addict that loved narcotics, right? I loved it all. I loved smoking cocaine. I loved shooting dope. I loved morphine suppositories. I loved any kind of dope. I've never met a drug I didn't like. I remember being with everybody in the military in Germany, and they had shipped all the junkies out of Vietnam into Germany to kind of figure out what do we do with all these addicted soldiers. And I encountered heroin. I never dreamed that I would shoot dope, right? Never dreamed that I would ever touch heroin. But there I was, you know, like bam, right away, I'm slamming that heroin. And anybody that's ever done that knows for a lot of people, they start to throw up. They get this violent reaction to it. That's not my reaction. You know, whenever I put dope in my system, my reaction is, oh, you know what? That's the same reaction I get today when I work my 12 steps. Ah, I was so broken when I came into this fellowship. I was 140 pounds. I was strung out. I'm what's called a polysubstance abuser. That means Greek for any and many. Anything to change how I feel. And then when I got sober, I'm so grateful that I've had that same willingness to experience recovery, to do the work of the 12 steps to have the experience that those steps produce and have produced in my life. One of my dear friends, we have a common thing we say in Cocaine Anonymous about what the definition of insanity is. And we say, that's doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. One of my dear friends, his son was murdered in a just a horrible situation, right? And his son was stabbed more than 50 times. And I sat through the trial with him, and I sat there as his sister testified about asking if she could just go back to say goodbye to her brother. Could I just go hold his hand? And the doctor said, no, there's no hands to hold because they were cut up so viciously as he tried to protect himself from the assault. The night of the sentencing was a Monday. The day of the sentencing was a Monday, and my friend spoke that night at the Razor's Edge meeting of Cocaine Anonymous. And he got up there, and I couldn't believe this man could even talk. But he got up and he gave one of the most beautiful shares I have ever heard in my life. And he said, we talk about the definition of insanity. And he said, they say it's, doing the same thing, expecting a different result. He goes, I don't think that's it. He said, to me, insanity is being a member of the 12-step fellowship of Cocaine Anonymous and not working your 12 steps. I thought, damn, that's it. Because then he talked about how those 12 steps allowed him to go through that trial. And during the midst of that trial, his wife had kidney failure and died. So his wife dies in the middle of the murder trial, right? And it's just like everything imaginable fucked. And he's still sober today. Man, have I walked through the fire in my years of recovery. I have had so much joy, but I held my brother Michael in my arms. I held him as he took his last breath. My brother Brian, who died in 1989, 2 years before I got sober, I took his pain meds. And then at his memorial, his wake, we decided it'd be a good idea to open his urn and take out some of his ashes and chop us up some lines of my brother's ashes and snorted my dead brother. It's a little weird. That's not a very dignified way to say goodbye to my bro. But because of Cocaine Anonymous, my whole life's changed. I got to be there for my brother Michael. I got to hospice him and then give him a dignified burial. And my brother was one of us. And he died of a disease called AIDS that was a death sentence when he got it. His partner died, all his friends died. And every year, my wife Donna made his panel for the AIDS quilt. And every year, it just happened last month, his panel was here. And me and my family got to go down there and I got to look at that beautiful panel that honors my brother's life. And when I went to my brother's house to clean it out after he was dead, in the back of his closet, there were two things: a big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and a can with a slit in the top, and it says God Can. And it's got a rainbow on it. And it says, when your troubles are too big and you can't handle them, write down your troubles and put them in this can. Because when you can't handle your problems, just know God can. And my brother Michael was so pissed at God, right? He'd been molested as a kid. His addiction was horrible. He would say stuff like, fuck God. And then, man, and then for me to find after he died, to have found his big book and his God can filled with his pain. And I shook it and it's full. And my sister said, let's open it up and see what he wrote. And I said, no, that will never be opened. So the miracle of Cocaine Anonymous, the place where dreams come true, right? Out of a life of addiction, out of the darkness, out of the suffering comes something mind-blowingly beautiful. And that is the human experience. Each one of us have our own unique paths. My disease, I would have died young, but I was blessed. Someone worked their 12th step on me. That's why I'm here with you today. I got lots of shit to do. I got a full life. When I get done here, I'm going in my car to, man, I've been trying to 12 step for 20 years, is in detox finally. And I'm going to see him today. And I'm so excited to be able to do that. I have to give back to Cocaine Anonymous because of the life that has been given me. I was hopeless. I was like strung out and wasted, but the worst part was what was happening inside me. I was so empty. I had lost myself. The little boy who used to chase the clouds, the kid who liked to dream, tiebreaker Terry, the one who liked to laugh and ride my bike and go backpacking and hiking and hurdling and all of the wonderful things of my life had given way to the sadness that addiction becomes. Drugs and alcohol are where dreams go to die, and Cocaine Anonymous is where dreams take flight. It's where we get to dust off the brokenness and we get to step out into the light and try to do something different. It was as though I'd been digging a grave my whole life and I threw everything sacred in the grave. My mother's hopes for me, my father's hopes for his son, my siblings' relationship. When Donna gave me love, that wasn't enough. I threw her love into the grave. My son's hopes for their father, their security, their peace as children, I threw that peace in the grave. I robbed my own kids. I stole their pain medicines. I did scandalous shit that would make a father hate himself. And I hated myself when I came to Cocaine Anonymous. And I did not find you, you found me. And as a result of that, I want to own that responsibility till the day that I die. I am a junkie hunter. I am out there looking for the sick and the suffering. I want to find those cats that don't believe there's a chance for me, because I had no reason to believe sobriety was possible. A man worked his 12th step on me. He stood between me and that grave before the last shovel of dirt went over my face. And he said, bro, he said, I don't know what's up with you. And the minute he started to talk, I thought, oh God, one more person's going to ask me one of those questions. What's wrong with you? Or why don't you stop? Or what about that beautiful family of yours? Can't you just quit? Hell, if I could have done that, I've quit. I've sworn on the Bibles. I've sworn on my dead mother's grave, on the lives of my children, on everything sacred, only to use again and again and again. And so I already knew that quitting was impossible. But what was different about this man is he did what I've been doing. He told me about himself. He said, I couldn't stop drinking and drugging. And I went and I got to this place and I got detoxed and I got sober. And I've been clean and sober for 4 years. And I own this pawn shop and everything in it. And then he got this big smile on his face and he looked at me and he said, a lot of it used to be yours. And I thought, damn, that is cold-blooded, right? But I had no idea that this man was setting my life on a path. That was May the 19th, 1991. I went that day driving a stolen van and I smoked crack and drank liquor until the sun came down and I threw my pipe out in the field and I walked through the doors of a detox and a new life began. And I called my wife. I said, I've turned myself in for treatment. She said, thank God. After 4 days in there, I had my first thought, my first clear thought. And that thought was, I bet you there's another hit in that pipe. And just then they said, meeting next door. And I followed everybody out and they all turned right to go to the meeting. I turned left and went to the field. And I crawled around on my hands and knees and I found that pipe and I stuck it in my waistband. I pulled the stickers out of my hair and I went back in and I put the fire. I went back in the bathroom and I put the fire to this pipe and I hit that pipe and I blew out this cloud of smoke and I felt nothing. And I looked in my reflection in the mirror and I went like that. There was something on my lip and it crawled down my hand and it was a bug. I looked in the bowl and it was filled with the burnt remnants of bugs. I had just smoked bugs. I went, oh, fuck. I dropped that pipe and I climbed on top of that plastic covered mattress in that detox. And I said a prayer, believe it, whether you're a believer or not. God help me. Abraham Lincoln, the great U.S. president, said, there have been many times where I've been driven to my knees with the inescapable conclusion there was nowhere else to go. And that was the story, man, nowhere else to go. So that's my sobriety date, May the 23rd. Even though bugs don't get you high, it was my intention to get loaded. So that's my sobriety date. And so much has happened over those years. So what I discovered was when you work the steps, you feel better. I never one time went to the dope dealer or to the dope house and got my drugs and said, go ahead, Francine, you do mine. How do you like to, hey, young, enjoy my hit of crack? How's that feel? I never one time gave up my dope. I did it for the effect. And it's the exact same thing here. I can admire your recovery, and there are many people here today whose recoveries I admire greatly, but that won't get me the effect. What gets me the effect is to get into our literature, to read the book, to do the, I'm open. I love the companion guide. I do that along with the big book, and that's opening new horizons for me. It's helping me to see the truth about myself. So I was so filled with brokenness and shame. I go to treatment, and when I was at treatment, we got family recovery, right? My wife, Donna, is super involved in Koanon family groups. In fact, in Sweden, that's where the World Service Office is. There's more Koanon family in Sweden than anywhere else in the world. And if people were to say to me, where do you think the best recovery is? I would tell you, man, when there's family recovery, something special is going on. But I know it sure changed our family's life. And so I don't know what drugs and alcohol did for you, but for me, it turned me into a coward, right? And I got a lot of shit that I've done that I'm ashamed of. We have two boys. They were 7 and 3 when I got sober. But we just had one. He was 3 years old at the time. And my wife, Donna, got pregnant with our second son. His name was Brandon. And at about the 7th month of pregnancy, Donna said to me, there's something wrong. The baby's not moving. And we went down and they did ultrasound. My version of the story and Donna's are different. My version was we went to this birthing center because we were kind of hippie counterculture. Well, Donna said, no, we were uninsured. But so we went to this place. They did an ultrasound and they came back and they said, Mr. and Mrs. Murphy, we're really sorry, but your son is dead. And then they turned to my wife and they said, ma'am, in keeping with the natural order of things, you need to carry this dead baby to term. We walked out of that hospital my wife pregnant out to here. Is it a boy or a girl? You going to teach them to play ball? And we're not talking, right? All I wanted to do is get to my sisters and start to grieve and start to cry and start to deal with it the only way I knew how to deal with stuff, and that's to drink and drug. And I'm pouring the booze into me. I can't get enough booze in me to kill the pain I was feeling. Finally, after like a month and a half, Donna said, if they don't take this baby, I'm going to kill myself. We went and they put us, we're not always the ones that are wrong. Sometimes the world injures us as addicts, but my disease stops me from being able to protest other people's wrong actions. It's like the disease cuts the tongue out of my mouth. They put me and Donna right across from the live nursery. And all day long, they're giving her the drug whatever it is to induce the labor. And all day long, people are like 5 feet away from us looking at their babies. Oh, look at the little newborn baby. And fuck, she's breathing and we're crying and going through this hell. And finally, my son is born and they go to hand me my boy. And I step back and I wouldn't take him. And I left my baby boy in the hospital. We got back home. My little son, who was 3, freaked out, like, why are mom and dad crying all the time? Nobody's talking about my brother. A week later, when my wife and son needed me the most, this coward without Cocaine Anonymous left my wife and son and fled the state with another woman. Oh man, you can't drink enough to kill that pain or shoot enough dope. Me and Donna ended up getting back together and we had a second son named Brian. And then finally, he's 3 years old. My life's falling apart. The man works his 12-step on me. I'm in treatment. And the man at the family group says, is there anything else you want to talk about? And I said, yeah, I want to talk about my son, Brandon. And Donna looked at me because we had never said a word about him. There are some things that are too hot to touch, pain too deep to get near. But what happens is we work the steps. God puts the people in our path who can help us to heal from what wounds oftentimes we don't even know exist. And I had to get that out there. And they gave us an assignment, and the assignment was to write my son a letter, me and Donna together, to write Brandon a letter and explain why I was here in Cocaine Anonymous and what am I trying to get out of this and what kind of a man do I want to be and what kind of a father. And we wrote a love letter to our son. And when we were done, they said, I got to grab this for you. Hold on. Where dreams come true. They said, do you have the letter? And I said, yeah. And they go, we're going to bury your son. We're going to have a funeral for your boy. We're going to have a Dixieland jazz funeral. And so me and Donna got at the end of a line of people that looked just like you. And we followed them across the campus into this chapel. And they played invisible instruments. Here was the song. Dee, 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 dee. Dee, 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 dee. Dee, 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 dee. To where the saints go marching in. Me and my wife, Donna, went and got on our knees. And sitting on the altar in this treatment center was this big wooden box called a God box. And we kissed our letter to Brandon goodbye, and we buried our son in these rooms. These are sacred places where we bring our pain and our shame and our brokenness, and we bring it and we all love each other. We hold each other up and we celebrate our successes and we grieve our pain. I'm grieving today. My dear friend Mark Pratt, one of the guys that started Cocaine Anonymous in Arizona, one of the best men ever. He gave me all of these just a few months ago. These are the keychains from the very first Cocaine Anonymous World Conventions ever. He just died. Man, we faced difficulties here, but back to this, we buried my boy here. That was 34 years ago. That treatment center closed. That treatment center closed. I see my time's up. This will only take a couple seconds. That treatment center closed. And I reached out. I've stayed involved. I volunteered there for 30 years straight, talking to every patient that went through there about the gift of going to treatment. And my wife Donna is active, and she sponsors in Co-Anon family groups the woman who was the office manager. And I said to them, I said, you know, when you close that place down, if you don't have anything to do with that God box, I'd like to have it. I came home from my Cocaine Anonymous meeting about 4 months ago, and sitting on my counter was this God box. The one I buried my son in 34 years ago. I put my hand on that box like I have it on there now, and I can't touch it without being moved to tears. Did God know when that broken newcomer put his worst pain in this box that someday it would be here in my home? I think God knew it was possible. Because in the realm of Cocaine Anonymous, where dreams come true, anything is possible. And the reason we have sponsors is they see things differently than we do. When I told my sponsor the story of this God box ending up here with me in my home, he said, God chose well the place to put that receptacle that had received so much pain from so many people over 40 years. See, I saw it just as it affects me, but when I connect with you, we see a bigger picture. We see a global picture. We see this beautiful picture called Cocaine Anonymous. Thank you so much for letting me share with y'all today. Love you.
Thank you so much, Terry. It is now time to open up for questions and answers. Please raise your hand if you would like to come in with a question.